Live on 5 Live, what is that, 20 minutes from now. Mike Pannett joins me, author and former police officer, worked in both London and Yorkshire. Mike Pannett, this is the phrase that Greater Manchester Police used is that it has cast a long and a dark shadow over the whole of Greater Manchester. This is a massive incident, and it is incredibly rare, isn't it, that anything on this scale happens within the police force.
Well, Richard, good afternoon to you. And I think I'd echo what Gary Shroon, the Assistant Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, has said today. I think it goes beyond that. I think this has cast a dreadful shadow over our policing family nationally. And of course, you know, here we have two police officers who are unarmed, who have gone along to whatever incident they were going to deal with, apparently unconnected to Dale Gregan, the suspect in all of this, and have obviously stumbled across him. And this individual is somebody who obviously has decided to cold-bloodedly kill, two unarmed.
We don't know, Mike. I have to come in there. We don't know it's him. He's been arrested.
That's fair enough, Richard. But going on from that, I think it wasn't long ago as well. You know, if you look at 2005, two unarmed police officers, and again, in this case, there were two unarmed female officers, Sharon Bielanowski and Bradford, went to a call of an armed robbery, and both officers were shot then. So that wasn't long ago, and I think, it just shows you just how dangerous, frontline policing can be. And of course,
but to lose although you reference that other incident, it is still the reason I say something of this scale very rarely hits the police force is that it is very rare that two officers are lost. Do
you know what, Richard? It is really quite rare. You're absolutely right. But one is bad enough. But unfortunately, every so often we do get unarmed police officers in the line of duty, which are murdered in this way, and none of them are good. And all I know is now I've had hundreds of messages from police officers across the country who are absolutely in shock, and it's now a time for reflection. You know, obviously Greater Manchester Police have got a huge operation on their hands to get to the bottom of all of this, and of course they'll no doubt keep everybody up to date with what develops, but as a sort of, a former frontline police officer, it doesn't get any worse than this, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Mike, thanks a lot.
Cheers, Richard.
Mike Pannett, author and former police officer. So as more details emerge, we'll bring them to you on 5 Live. It is unquestionably the major story of the day, a terrible, terrible incident. And the police, I know I said this a moment ago, but worth repeating that this press conference by Greater Manchester Police will be at 3:30 when they will give us, as we understand it, quite a lot more detail, including the names of the officers that have died.
Hello, you're watching BBC News with Tim Wilcox and Joanna Gosling.
Good afternoon. The time is 2:32. Two unarmed female police officers have been shot dead after responding to what's being described a routine call-out in Hattersley in the Tameside area of Greater Manchester. It's understood they were responding to a 999 call. The Home Secretary, Theresa May, described it as a deeply shocking incident and a terrible reminder of the risks that police officers face every day to keep our communities safe.
Dale Cregan, who is 29 and wanted for questioning about separate gun and grenade attacks that killed a father and son, handed himself into police shortly after the incident. Well, let's stay with our main news this afternoon. Two unarmed female police officers have been shot dead while responding to a routine call-out in Greater Manchester. Witnesses say about a dozen shots were fired during the incident on a housing estate in Hattersley at around 11 o'clock this morning.
Shortly after the shooting, Dale Cregan, who's 29 and wanted for questioning separately about the murders of a father and son, handed himself into police. The Home Secretary, Theresa May, said it was a terrible reminder of the risks that police officers face every day to keep our communities safe. The President of the Association of Chief Police Officers, Sir Hugh Ord, said the death of two female police officers is deeply sad news for the police service. The two unarmed officers were responding to a routine call when faced with a dangerous and deadly situation.
Well, let's bring in Mike Pannett, a former Metropolitan Police officer. He's on the phone now. Thank you for joining us. What are your thoughts on this tragic incident?
Good afternoon to you, Joanna. Listen, I've already received hundreds of messages up and down the country, but I'd like to first of all just echo what Gary Shroon, the Assistant Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, has said, because not only the family and friends and colleagues of these two police officers, which have been absolutely brutally murdered, the whole policing family's hearts go out to these two officers. I'm probably a little bit like the rest of our police service, in a great deal of shock at the moment. This could not be worse. And there's this Dale Gregan. As we know, he's already brutally murdered somebody back in May, one of the Sharp brothers.
Sorry, I'll just come in there. I mean, he's obviously under arrest on suspicion of...
Absolutely. He is under arrest. And what I was going on to say was, is previously, it's likely he's linked to some gangland shooting.
Well, sorry, I'm just going to come in there again because we're talking about a suspect who's been arrested about another incident. So I think if we just talk about these unarmed officers and really the police response to their deaths today.
Well, the police response will be, whilst dealing in the most appalling circumstances with two dead colleagues to deal with, obviously their inquiries will be looking at who potentially was harbouring this suspect. But let's be absolutely right about it. Here we have two police officers who have gone on a routine call, who, like the vast majority of our police service, are unarmed, and have come across somebody who has straight away, we don't know the full details, but quite brutally murdered them both. And unfortunately, to me, it brings back all too many memories of our frontline police service, who, when unarmed, deal in the most dangerous of circumstances. I only go back to 2005 when poor old Sharon Bednevsky and her female colleague Teresa Milburn. Sharon was shot dead, and Teresa, critically injured, responding unarmed to a armed robbery. And this is the sort of courage that all too often we don't see on a daily basis. And now there'll no doubt be talk of whether the police should be armed or whether they shouldn't be armed. But I think what's needed here is some reflection as to what's actually gone on here.
OK, well, obviously lots of tributes being paid to the bravery of these two police officers who've tragically lost their lives today. Mike Pannett, thank you for joining us.
Let's go and talk to Mike Pannett, joining me on the show, an author, former police officer. Mike, good evening.
Good evening, Paul.
It's shocking. How common is it for two unarmed police women to be deployed together as a partnership?
Well, I mean, I think whether they're police women or policemen, they're all police officers these days. And I think, just before we move forward, I just want to just say, how I agree with everything that Ian Hansen just said there. And not only is it a dreadfully sad day for the police officers of Greater Manchester Police and their friends and colleagues and actually the people who live there, but it's a hugely sad loss to the policing family nationally. But obviously, what we've got here are two officers who, it looks very much like they've been lured to an address, and they've turned up totally unarmed, and it does appear, whether they've been armed or not, it strikes me as they've not had much chance when there's a hail of bullets, and there's obviously the reports now of potentially an explosion as well, which could indicate a hand grenade or something. And it's just absolutely dreadful, two young people going about to do the job, and having no idea what they were going to turn up to, and like you say, it brings back all too many memories for myself. It wasn't many weeks ago when an off-duty police officer, P.C. Dibble, stepped in to sort of serve the community and ended up being shot fatally, and then again very close to my home in Yorkshire, when again this just happened to be two police officers, and in fact they were both female as well, responded to an incident of an armed robbery in Bradford. And poor Sharon Bezinevsky, who I think was about 38 at the time. I think it was one of her 4-year-old children's birthdays, and a female colleague were shot by these armed robbers, and they were unarmed, and they were responding to that unarmed. One died, which is Sharon, and I think the other girl was called Theresa Milburn. But here we have 2 young people, Nicola Hughes and Fiona Bone, who have turned up and would have had no idea what was going to be facing them, and it just shows you how fortunate we are to have a police service that operate by and large unarmed, and to me, anybody who would do that to such people are an absolute cowards. And I won't go into the background of the suspect because I think people will be able to read it for themselves. But for goodness me, picking on individuals who have got no way of defending themselves and arming themselves in any shape or form is horrific and horrendous. And so my message is very clear. If you people who carry weapons, knives, guns, then this is what tragedy can happen, and this is unfortunately what police officers are facing on a regular basis, I'm afraid. And thanks for letting me sort of rabbit on, Paul, but that's what I feel at the moment. No, well,
obviously it's a devastating day, and police officers across the country, well, the whole nation will feel what's happened here, because and obviously it will inevitably, as days go by, bring about the debate as to whether our police should be armed, whether there should be better protection. But in an incident like this, then there wasn't a lot you could do.
Paul, you've got to ask yourself the question: would it have actually made any difference? And I think the Chief Constable of Manchester sort of summed it up fairly well. That would this have made a difference? Would they have had a chance in if they'd been armed? Because you don't turn up to every call, and the hundreds and the thousands of calls daily police officers deal with. You wouldn't be walking up with your gun out. So, and it was recently, I can't remember exact dates, but I think it was around 2006. They balloted and they surveyed about 48,000 officers, and even the officers themselves said, I think it was 82% of them. And I've got a good memory, so I'm probably right, we're opposed to the idea of routinely carrying firearms. But, we must afford our officers protection, make sure they've got good protection, and, look at the fuss that's been made when officers have been issued with taser, and it really strikes me as we really need to get things right in this country. When things go wrong in the police, and unfortunately, we've seen a number of incidents recently, with the Hillsborough and the riot situations. Things go wrong. Very often, that is nothing to do with our front line, PCs, sergeants, and inspectors. And unfortunately, these are the people who seem to, take the biggest hits. And they are decent people going about doing their very, very best. So I think time for reflection. And I personally don't want to see the routine arming of our police service. And, you'll know as well as I do in the Midlands and Manchester and London and elsewhere, unfortunately people have got access to weapons, but potentially I think the best way to do about that is having a very well-trained, quick-responding armed police service. Of course you need to be backing the unarmed officers up, but I think most police officers wouldn't want to be armed, and a time for reflection, and I think that's potentially why we're envied around the world of having such a balanced, sort of decent police service. Although things do occasionally go wrong, as we've heard, but the good things that police do never really hit the media. So it's dreadful that I'm having to commentate on something which is truly shocking, and I'm deeply saddened about it. And I've got friends and very close family still in the police service, and they're very dedicated people, and I think it's just worth remembering and thinking about things sometimes, Paul.
Mike, thanks for your thoughts tonight. Mike Pannett, who's an author, former police officer. Your views most welcome on the show, of course. WM, followed by your message to 81333 to text the show.